ever feel that like pressure to always win, like every single argument, or to see success like right away in everything you do?
Yeah, it's almost like this constant hum in the background of everything.
Totally. But what if I told you sometimes it's actually way more powerful to kind of, we'll take a step back, maybe even like lose a little bit in the short term, you know?
That's a really interesting concept, and it's exactly what we're diving into today.
Yeah, we're going deep on strategy, hashtag 12 from the 33 strategies of war. Uh, Lose the battles, but win the war, the grand strategy.
It's all about thinking long-term, strategic sacrifice.
Mm.
We'll be pulling lessons from history, looking at how this idea plays out in the modern world, trying to
Yeah.
really grasp how it works.
Totally. And I mean, it does sound kind of counterintuitive, right? Like, why lose at all?
Right.
But the core idea here, I think, is so effective. Keep your eyes on the prize, right? The
Right,
big
right.
picture.
I
Don't
think
get bogged down in every little disagreement or setback. By focusing on that bigger picture and even being willing to give a little on the smaller things.
you can actually clear the path for way bigger wins down the line. More control, more success overall. Think of it like a shortcut, a strategic shortcut to getting what you really want.
A strategic shortcut. I like that.
And for you listening, I think we all feel this, the constant flood of information, the pressure to do more every day. This strategy is really helpful for cutting through that.
It's about choosing what really matters.
Yeah. Deciding where to put your energy, what to
Or
just let go of so you can get those bigger long-term results.
absolutely. Okay, let's get into it. What makes this strategy so powerful in the first place? Why on earth would you choose to lose?
So the book really highlights this. A lot of people, they spread themselves too thin. You know, they're fighting on every front.
Got to be right in every discussion.
It is. It's a sustained, long-term vision. Being willing to sacrifice now for big gains later.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think the book uses a great example from history, Otto von Bismarck and the unification of Germany. Just to recap, what was going on in Germany back then?
So in the mid-1800s, what we know now as Germany, it was actually a whole bunch of independent states,
Right, a real mix, kingdoms, principalities, all competing.
each one with its own ruler, its own interests, often conflicting, of course. There was constant jostling for power.
Total chaos. So how does Bismarck fit into this? How did he, like, lose battles to win the war of unifying Germany?
Well, Bismarck was the minister-president of Prussia, and he had this super clear goal:
Proud.
unite all those separate German states under Prussian leadership,
Okay, ambitious.
for sure. But what's interesting is his willingness to accept setbacks. He didn't shy away from conflict, but he often let his rivals get what seemed like a win, at least temporarily.
Interesting. So it wasn't about avoiding conflict completely?
No, more like being really strategic about when and how to engage. He was playing 3D chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
But that's one way to put it. But wasn't there a risk that those little losses would make his enemies think he was weak? Like embolden them to push harder?
That's a super important point. The difference is in the intent, in the message being sent. Bismarck's concessions, they were calculated, often designed to, like, lull his opponents into this false sense of security or even to stir up trouble between them.
Oh, go clever.
Yeah, it wasn't about being weak. It was about setting the stage for future dominance. And his timing was impeccable. He'd wait for the perfect moment to strike when his rivals were off balance and Prussia was strong. This whole carefully planned approach, it eventually led to the creation of a unified German empire, which completely shifted the power dynamics in Europe.
Wow. I mean, that's a masterclass in thinking long term. And it shows that, sometimes those short-term setbacks, they can actually set you up for huge success later.
Yeah, it's about seeing the whole board, not just the immediate move.
Exactly. Now, the text also brings in Robert Greene's perspective on this. What are some of his key principles for developing this kind of long-term mindset?
Greene emphasizes a few things. First, you got to have patience. Control. Don't just react to every little thing that bugs you. That way you can keep a clear head and steer things in the direction you want.
Makes sense.
Second, be willing to sacrifice. Those little wins right now, trade those for much bigger rewards later.
It's like delaying gratification, but on a grander scale.
Exactly. Easier said than done, though, right? Our brains are kind of wired for instant gratification.
Totally.
So you got to fight that. Develop the ability to see the future benefits, even when there's a cost today. And finally, avoid distractions. All those little squabbles, those ego-driven conflicts.
What things that just drain your energy.
Exactly. They don't get you closer to your main goal.
And that's what's so relevant to our listeners, right? Who are all about getting knowledge efficiently and not getting overwhelmed. You focus on what matters, and all that noise just fades away. We saw the principle in action with Bismarck. Now let's talk about the theory behind this approach. Robert Greene, in the 33 Strategies of War, gives us a really useful framework for thinking about the mindset needed to lose the battles but win the war.
Right. It's all about how you use your mental and emotional energy. You can't
Right.
fight every fight.
You got to choose your battles.
Right. Now, the book also gives some examples of how this works in different areas of life. I want to run through some of those.
For sure. Let's see. In business, we see companies taking a loss on a product or service, like in the short term,
Yep.
to gain market share over the long haul.
Think like introductory offers, those lost leaders, getting people in the door.
Exactly. In leadership, effective leaders, they often just ignore the little disagreements, the personality clashes on their teams.
Got to keep everyone focused on the big picture.
Right, on the mission. And then in our personal lives, there's delayed gratification. Sacrificing a little fun now for bigger benefits later.
Saving for a house instead of that impulse trip.
Yeah.
Classic example.
Right. All great examples. And the book uses a modern example that's super interesting, Amazon's growth strategy.
Oh, yeah. That one's fascinating.
For years, Amazon was like hemorrhaging money, free shipping, undercutting everyone on prices.
A lot of people thought they were crazy. Even competitors were scratching their heads.
How are they going to make money?
Right. But Bezos and the team at Amazon, they were playing a different game entirely.
A long game. They were focused on customer loyalty, building this huge distribution network.
Right. Basically just like overwhelming the competition with scale and, just being obsessed with their customers.
It's wild. Those losses, they weren't just about low prices. They were strategically gathering data on shoppers, building this crazy logistics machine.
So many people saw it as a weakness, but it was actually an investment, a long-term play for market dominance.
And today, they're an e-commerce giant. It proves their approach worked.
It really shows the power of focusing on the long game, even when it looks like you're losing in the moment. It makes you wonder, though, inside Amazon, were there people pushing back against this whole strategy, like sacrificing profits for so long? It had to be a tough sell internally.
Oh, I'm sure. It takes a lot of courage, vision to stick to a plan like that when it seems like you're failing.
Absolutely. So let's bring it back to our listener. How can they apply this kind of strategic thinking in their own lives?
That's the big question.
The first step, as the book says, is to get really clear about your long-term goals. What truly matters to you, big picture.
Yeah.
Once you know that, you can start looking at the battles you face every day, the little wins and losses. Are those getting you closer to your goals, or are they just distractions?
That's a great filter.
Think about it like this. It's one thing to ignore a competitor's minor price change. It's another to ignore a fundamental shift in the market.
One's strategic, the other's, well, maybe you're just not paying attention.
Exactly. And the book also talks about ego, which I think is so important here.
I agree.
Greene says that our ego often traps us in short-term thinking. We have to win every argument, defend every little point.
Gotta be right.
Right. But that need to be right all the time, it's exhausting. It distracts us from the bigger picture.
You spend all your energy on those little fights, and you miss the real opportunity.
Exactly. The people who can set their ego aside, focus on the long game, they're usually the ones who achieve the most.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to think about, even in a smaller context, like working on a team.
You can't always be the hero.
Right. Sometimes you got to let someone else have the win, even if it stings a little. That can be strategic too. Which reminds me, the book uses a really strong counterexample from history, the Vietnam War.
Oh, right. Yeah, that one's sobering.
It shows how winning battles doesn't mean you'll win the war.
Yeah.
The U.S. military, they won a lot of those direct engagements in Vietnam, tactical victories.
Yeah.
But the North Vietnamese, they had different strategy.
A longer view.
Right. It wasn't about winning every fight. It was about endurance, breaking the will of the American public, the government. They knew they could outlast the U.S.
And in the end, that's what happened. Despite all those battlefield wins, the U.S. withdrew.
The North Vietnamese won. So it's really important to understand. Just piling up those small wins.
It doesn't mean you're winning the war.
Exactly. You could lose sight of the overall goal. But on the other hand, the book also warns about mistaking inaction for strategy.
Right, there's a nuance there. It's not about avoiding conflict just because you're scared or lazy.
Right.
True strategic inaction, that's a choice. You're deliberately stepping aside because the fight doesn't serve your long-term goals.
It's like, imagine planting a tree. You won't get fruit for years.
Right.
Right. But you got to nurture that tree.
If you're busy picking every little berry you see along the way, you'll never get that big harvest.
Exactly. It's about calculated withdrawal. And the example of Napoleon kind of drives that point home, too.
Oh, yeah. He was brilliant, won tons of battles across Europe.
But he never seemed to know when to stop.
Just kept pushing, always wanting more.
His ambition, or maybe his ego,
Yeah.
it led him to fight constantly. And that drained France. All their resources, their people.
Overextension.
Exactly. He couldn't see his own limits. And it led to his downfall. Even if you win a lot, if you don't know when to stop, you could end up losing everything.
Sobering. So how can our listeners actually use this wisdom today? What are some steps they can take?
The book gives a few good ones.
Mhm.
First, anytime you're facing a conflict, a decision that's going to take a lot of energy, ask yourself, will this get me closer to my long-term goal?
If not,
Let it go, especially if you're even a little unsure. Second, practice letting go of the small stuff. The pointless arguments, the minor annoyances, they don't matter in the big scheme of
that's
things.
freeing, really.
It is. Third, develop a long-term perspective. Don't think in days or weeks, think in months, years. Fourth, be willing to make sacrifices. That could mean delaying gratification, investing in something that won't pay off right away.
Or just being uncomfortable for a little while.
Right, because the payoff will be bigger later. And finally, discipline. Sticking to your strategy means resisting the urge to chase every shiny object,
Totally. Great advice. And the book ends with another modern example. This time it's Tesla.
Oh yeah, Tesla's a good one. Their rise in the auto industry. It's a classic long game.
For years, they were struggling financially, billions in losses.
A lot of people doubted them. But Elon Musk and his team, they were laser focused on their vision. They wanted to change the world with electric vehicles. They tuned out the noise, the short-term pressures.
Kept investing in research development, manufacturing.
And today,
Mhm.
they're the leader in electric vehicles. Those early struggles, those losses, they were strategic. They paved the way for where Tesla is now.
It's inspiring, honestly. So to sum it all up, this deep dive into strategy, #12, has shown us that real power, lasting power. It's not about winning every little fight.
It's about having a clear vision and being smart enough to let go of the small battles so you can win the war.
Focusing only on those immediate wins can actually hold you back.
It drains your energy, your resources.
So for you listening, here's a question to think about. How might shifting to this lose the battles, win the war mindset change how you approach things?
Is there a small battle you could step back from right now so you can focus on a bigger goal?
It's definitely worth thinking about. As always, this deep dive is just the start. Keep exploring these ideas, see what resonates with you.
Exactly. There's always more to learn.